Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pi Day 2022. This is the final session of Pi Day 2022, and we are proud to present it. This is our hands-on lab on AI. Be an AI wizard, no ML magic required. We got a few goals here for this event, for this session. We want to give you some hands-on experience with using an Oracle AI service. We want to share some information about what capabilities Oracle AI has to offer, and we hope you leave with some experience you can apply to your own work. Now, our agenda for today is we'll do just some brief introductions. We're going to actually reverse our original order we had planned based on some actual experience. We're going to give you a chance to set up a trial tenancy first, if you haven't done that already. Then we'll give you an overview of the Oracle AI, and in particular, the OCI Vision service that we'll be using today. And then we'll do a preview of the remaining labs, and then we'll be moving on into it. So let's get going. Here's your team for today. I'm Wes. I'll be doing the first half of the lab, and then Mark will come on and cover the second half of the labs. We've got a fantastic team here on the backside, answering questions, handling the Q&A and the chat, helping you with issues. We've got Jay and Prasanna and Jarrett. So we'll all be working to support you as you go through the lab today. Here's a couple of tips we've learned to help make the lab successful and go smoothly for you. Notice that we've got both a QA feature in Zoom and a chat feature. So if you would please use the Q&A feature to post questions or any requests for help, those queue up for us, and it helps us kind of manage and make sure we don't overlook any question or anybody needing help. And feel free to use the chat, for any comments and feedback as we go along. You can chat to the team I just showed you. We'll get your chat. We can also respond one-on-one if needed to do that. And then we're going to be posting some information in the Pi Day Slack workspace. So we're going to put that information in the chat. Looks like it's already there. So you can use a link in the chat to be able to get to that workspace, and then we'll put some files and things to make it go smoother so you can pull some stuff right down out of the chat. All right, so we're ready to move forward. First thing we're going to do is set up a trial account. Before I do this, I'm going to put a little poll. I know we're late in the whole Pi Day event here, so I want to find out how many of you already have a cloud account set up. So if you wouldn't mind just answering the first question. You don't have to do the second one. We're not ready for that yet. But just let me know if you already have a trial account, or it's actually asking, do you need to sign up for a trial account? If you don't, please indicate that. That'll just give us a feel for how many people still need to do that. And we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to have their trial account and use it for today's lab. Give a few more seconds here. Looks like a lot of folks do have accounts set up, but also some need to do that as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. That tells me what I need to know. And I'll share the results just so everybody can see that as well. We had still a little over a quarter need to get your trial account. So we're going to do that now as the next step in the lab. So as a part of that, you may have seen this URL already, but this is the URL you're going to use. Let's make sure that's in the chat. Yes, it is. So go to the chat, click on that URL, and that's going to help you get started for signing up. This whole process to get signed up should take 6 to 8 minutes. At least that's what I've timed it at when I've done it. So there's also some benefits to signing up for a trial tenancy. You're going to get some more swag, and who doesn't want more swag? When you hit that URL, it's actually going to take you to this page. Okay, it's going to be a sign up page. It's going to ask for just some information. Just fill out this. This is going to walk you through the whole process. You'll have to put your country or territory, first and last name, email. That email is very important. When you signed up for Pi Day, you gave us an email. That's the email that we used to give you a special promotional deal with your trial account, which means you're going to get $500 in free cloud credits instead of the normal 300, and you're not going to have to provide any credit card information. Okay, you'll just skip over that process. So make sure you use that same email when you sign up. And you'll have to do the little CAPTCHA thing and then hit the verify my email button when you do that, or when you're filled out the information. You're going to then get an email from Oracle. A couple of folks have had issues with their own email system blocking email from Oracle. You may have to check that if you don't get the email, but it should come really quick. There'll be a button you click in that email just to verify your email address is correct. And then that is going to bring you back into Oracle Cloud once you've done that. So I'm just going to pause here a minute, let everybody catch up, fill out that page, and then we'll come back. Okay, so if all of that has gone well and you use the same email and we whitelisted that email for you, which is we gave you the trial promotion, you'll see this pop up when you come back. It'll have your email address and it'll say you've been invited to sign up for an Oracle Cloud that has the following offer, and that's where you get the $500 in credits for 30 days. So please select that, select the offer. That's what will allow you to skip over the request for a credit card. If you don't get that, it means you're probably using a different email than what you signed up for, or else we don't have your email whitelisted. If that's the case, put that in the Q&A. Let us know you're not getting the offer, and we've got a team standing by that can fix that really quick. Once you select the offer, this is going to verify again. I don't think it's not going to verify twice. But the next thing that's going to come up is it's going to ask you for some information. You're going to see this page. And one of the pieces of information on this page is you're going to have to give it a password. This is going to be the password for your Oracle account, your trial tenancy account. So select that carefully and remember it. And it's also going to ask for a home region. Now, that region is the Oracle region, and we've got data centers all over the globe. I'm recommending you pick one of these since we're kind of in the Western Hemisphere here. If you're in North America, pick one of these. If you're in South America, pick one of these. If you happen to be in another part of the globe, you could pick one of these. These are going to give you the best experience. We've got some other newer regions that don't quite have all the compute we want for this today. So we're recommending you don't use one of those. If you've already created your trial account and it was not with one of these, it probably won't be an issue. If so, we'll deal with it when we get there. See, we've got some questions. If your verify button is not showing yet, make sure you've got all your information filled out correctly and your password meets the password requirements. So it does tell you there, can't exceed 40 characters. You have to have the right combination of characters. It's got to be a pretty secure password. So make sure all that's good. Your cloud account name, that's assigned usually based on your email, and then that home region. So just make sure you get all that information, and then you should be able to continue. You'll have to accept the terms of use. And then final bit of information it's going to ask for. And once you finally get through all of that prompted information, you'll be able to start your free trial. And then you're going to see this. You'll get a little dialogue showing a progression as you. This is when it's actually provisioning your cloud tenancy. Normally takes, you know, a minute or two. In some cases, we've seen it go longer if we've got a lot of people hitting the same region at once. So if it takes a little longer than that, don't sweat it. You can let it cook while we're going through this next piece of information. Now, once this completes, it's going to pop you into your actual cloud tenancy. And so you'll see the OCI Console, and we'll come back to that in a later lab. So that's when you get to that step, you know everything's done. You're also going to get a second email from Oracle, which confirms your account information. You'll want to save this because you can use it later to come back into your account. It'll have your cloud account name. It'll have your username, which is the email you provided. I've kind of blocked some stuff out on this one. It'll have a link to your email, which you can bookmark. And worst case, if you forget how to get into Oracle Cloud, you can always go to cloud.oracle.com and log in that way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving to keep us on schedule, even so some of you may still be finishing up that process. Just listen with one ear while that's going on. We're going to be using all the lab procedures, everything we're doing today, even though I'm going to be talking through it with you, it's all documented in GitHub. And we've got a link to GitHub that I'm sure we've already shared. If not, our team will be putting it up there. And that's where you can go to get these procedures. So if you want, you can turn off sound and you can go through those procedures on your own. And we're here to answer your questions. We're also going to be demonstrating this. And so if you want to watch and then watch and do that way, you can certainly do it that way. Whatever works for you. We've got 90 minutes here to go through this, and we should be able to get through all of the lab. But in some cases, you may not quite get finished, but you've still got the procedures there if you need them. So I'm going to tell you about Oracle AI. This is just a short presentation to give you some orientation, tell you about some of the services that we're actually going to be using in the lab today. So let me tell you about what Oracle's doing with AI and what's driving our approach. AI and machine learning are really all about data. It's about using data and taking advantage of the data that you have available to you. We all know there's been lots of data in our organizations for years. Most of it was tied up within our applications. It's a structured data that's in databases, but there's so much more data that we have available to us today in our organizations, but it comes from many different sources. It could be, semi-structured data, unstructured data, data in documents, data from social media, data from our call centers. In the medical world, there's lots of biological data. There's weather data of things that come from our planet. So just many sources of data that when put together can provide new insights and ways to solve problems that we couldn't solve before. So we're building AI to help our customers take advantage of all of this data to build what we call these next generation scenarios, these things that you couldn't do before. Now you can, because you have new ways to use this data. So what are the services that help you do that? Well, we call this portfolio of services Oracle AI. Okay, that's just kind of our brand for this collection of many things within Oracle Cloud. And there's two tiers of these services here. So you see at the bottom, machine learning services, and you see this top layer, which is AI services. And they're surrounded by data at the bottom, because all of this requires data. And you see applications at the top, and that's loosely refers to any type of ways you can consume AI. It could be a business application. It could be, a homegrown application. It could be a business process, many different ways that you can consume AI. The machine learning services at the bottom are targeted at data scientists that are building machine learning models from scratch. They're starting with data, they prepare data, they will use machine learning algorithms to train machine learning models, and then ultimately deploy those for use in applications or business processes. And we have tools to help data scientists do that work. We have OCI Data Science that runs in the cloud. It's targeted towards Python loving data scientists that like to use open source. We have machine learning and Oracle database, where we have our built-in high performance algorithms in the database that you can use if you're just working with data in Oracle database. We also have a great tool for data labeling, which supports both machine learning and AI services. And then we have the AI services there at the next layer. So the difference between AI services and machine learning services, the AI services, we've done all the machine learning work for you. We've built these specialized machine learning models for these different areas, and we've packaged these up behind an API. There's no infrastructure to manage, no infrastructure to provision. You can just simply call the service, pass in data, and you get a response back. And that's what we're going to do today in the lab. You're going to see how that works. We have a number of different services for different types of AI functionality. We have Oracle Digital Assistant, which is the chatbot functionality. It's great if you're going to build an interactive bot that you want to use with an application or business process. We have OCI language. By the way, OCI means Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. That's just our abbreviation for Oracle Cloud. Language works with text data. It does a number of different things. It'll do language detection. It'll do entity extraction, topic classification, aspect-based sentiment analysis. So it'll give you lots of information out of raw text. Speech is speech to text. It transcribes audio files, speech and audio. Vision, this is one we're going to be working with today. It does a number of things with images, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. That's the one we're going to be working with today. Anomaly detection is for detecting anomalies in time series data. And not just a single time series signal, but multiple time series signals. Although you can also we're going to add being able to do it with single time series signals as well. It's often used with IoT data, machine signals, but it can be used with any time series data. And then OCI forecasting also works with time series data, but it's more targeted towards forecasting things like business metrics. So many ways that can be applied, and forecasting is a general area that's used in machine learning, but here we're providing a targeted machine learning AI service. So and we've got more services in our pipeline that we're building out, more AI services to provide more and more functionality for our customers to be able to get the AI capabilities that they need for their business. We're very business focused here with these services. And these services don't stand alone. They work within the larger Oracle Cloud infrastructure and rely on other services. So we have other business analytics and Oracle Analytics Cloud. We have graph analytics. We have all kinds of data integration services and data management services, all running on the core cloud infrastructure. And you can combine these services in many different architectures to address different types of scenarios. So let's talk about OCI Vision just a little bit more, because that's the one we're going to be using today. And it's a fun service to work with because it's so visual. Now, so OCI Vision, it's simply a computer vision service that works with images. And it provides two main capabilities. So the first capability is for analyzing photographic images, like detecting objects inside an image and classifying the major features in the scene. And it also locates and extracts text that appears in the scene, like on a sign. And then the second capability is for working with document images. That's what we're calling document AI here. So you can use it to understand documents, whether it's scanned PDFs or standardized forms, or even photographs that contain textual information. You can see an example here on the screen of this pill bottle that has information printed on it. And it's actually wrapped around the bottle, but it can still extract text from that often difficult type of image to get information from. So the document AI does like text recognition, also commonly called OCR, optical character recognition. So it just pulls text off images. It does document classification, where it classifies documents into different types. It does language detection, extracts tabular data on a page, and it will do key value extraction for receipts. So, where you want to, if you're going to use a receipt, like in a reimbursement system, you need to pull certain information off that receipt, and you need to know exactly, okay, where is the receipt total? Who's the receipt vendor? What is the date? Those are information you generally need to go into your ERP system to reimburse somebody for that charge. So that's why we have that key value extraction. We're going to be adding that capability to invoices down the road as well. So today we're going to be working with object detection. Is going to be the primary feature that we're going to do the lab with. But the image analysis also does this image classification, text recognition. We're gonna try those out first in the console, so you can kind of see how those work. So at this point, let's put. I'm gonna pop our poll back up, and so I just want to get an idea on answer question number 2. Indicate your progress with the lab so far. So really all we've done is ask you to get your trial tenancy set up. If you've got that, you've got successful completion. If you're still working on it, that's fine. If you're having issues, hopefully you've asked for some help and we've got some people working with you. And I see some of you are just watching along, which is fine. We're glad to have you and just absorbing the information that way. All right, I'm going to end the poll. I see several, we have a good chunk that have completed up till now. Some are still working on it. Okay. Thank you for keeping us up to date here. Before we jump into the lab, let's just go over what modules, and I'll show you where we're at right now. So we just did the overview, and some of you are still working on setting up the trial account. The next thing we're going to do is lab 2. Now this is where we're going to be going into the procedures we've got in the GitHub. I'll be showing those on the screen. You're going to go into your cloud tenancy. We're going to configure your tenancy. There's a policy we have to set up. We're going to get some data uploaded into your tenancy so we can use that in the future labs down these 3, 4, and 5. And then you're going to actually see how the Vision service works in the console. And then I'll hand it over to Mark, and he's going to take you through lab 3, where you can exercise the REST API for Vision, and you can get an interactive feel for how that API works, how you can pass in some data, get a response back, and see what that looks like. And then we've got an application, a sample application that you can run in Python that will use the Python SDK. We've got a batch of images ready to go. And this application will process that batch of images, do some object detection, and show you some results. And the scenario here is it's a safety application. So think of people in an industrial scene working in a plant where they have to have hard hats on. And maybe you've got some regulations that say, hey, you need to have your people wearing their hard hats. And if there's too much violation going on, we're going to fine you. And maybe you want to be able to prove to the regulators, yeah, your people are wearing their hard hats. So if you've got cameras around your plant, you can capture scenes of people doing their work, and you can actually count how many people in the scene, how many hard hats you have in the scene, and you can total those up, and you can tell if there's a difference, and you can even then identify which images have people that are not wearing their hard hats. And that's what our application does. So you're going to set this application up. You just have to set a couple of variables to make it work with your tenancy, and then it's going to do that work for you. And you can see how this whole thing works together. And then we, lab 5, if we get to it, we'll demo how you can actually retrain OCI Vision to create a custom model for your own data. And Mark's going to demo that, and that'll be your take-home exercise. So here we go. How are we doing on time? All right, we're about 30 minutes in. We're doing pretty good. We'll come back to that. So at this point, you should go to the link we've provided for GitHub. And it should take you right here. This is our Pi Day lab in our GitHub. And by the way, this GitHub has all kinds of useful resources for our data science and AI services. We have other labs in here, other resources you can try out if you're using our data science service. We've got lots of sample notebooks and things like that. So you can see all the labs here. You can get a link to them all here. We're going to go to lab 2 right now. All right, so you can follow along right here in the procedures. First thing we're going to do is set up the cloud tenancy. And there's Vision does require a particular policy. A policy is just grants resources some sort of right in the system. So it could be people, could be other services. Rather than having to manually enter this policy, we're going to use a feature that allows you to do that in an automated way. So go into your cloud tenancy, and you're going to go to Developer Services and to Stacks. That's under the Resource Manager category. All right, and it takes you to this Stacks page. And there's a button right in the middle of the page to create a stack. Now go ahead and click that. And there's all kinds of stacks that you can run. A stack is basically just a script to configure something in the cloud. So we've got, you can write your own, but we've also got some template stacks out there. So select template, and then select template, and select the service tab. So this is where we have templates built for specific cloud services. And notice one right at the top is Vision. So just select that template. Okay, it creates a name automatically, creates it in a compartment. Now the compartment, if you're using a trial tenancy, it's going to default to your root compartment. That's the simplest thing to do. You just keep it in the root compartment. We're going to do all the work in our root compartment here. If you're using your own paid tenancy, you probably already know which compartment you're going to be working in. All right, so hit next. It's going to, this little wizard will take you through setting it up. There's a couple of defaulted values for the group name and the root policy. You can just leave those as is. but check these two other boxes to use custom models and to use batch analysis. And again, defaults to the root compartment. Just leave that as is and go to next. And then the final page here is just a confirmation of your selections. So if everything looks good, you can go ahead and hit create. Oh, there was one little checkbox at the end, which you should have checked. I didn't, but it's all right. Just means you got to run the job manually. And you have to, if you didn't check that box at the bottom to run the apply automatically, just hit it now and apply it. So what that does, that runs this little script in the background, and it goes off and creates a group in your environment, and it creates a policy. And that will be handy for using Vision Service. All right, we're going to pause for just a minute and let everybody catch up. You can again refer to those procedures in GitHub if I went too fast for you there. All right, I'm going to check the chat, see what we've got here. Okay, I see we have some folks, Danielle, if you're having issues with your tenancy, our team will help you. Okay, having a few tenancy issues out there. And our team is there to help you. All right, so I'm going to keep going. So once your stack has been created, you'll see the results there. It should only take a few seconds to complete, and you can see the two resources that it created, the vision group and the policy. So now that's done. And that's a super easy way to create resources in your cloud environment. You can do this for huge, complex environments, as well as something just as simple as this for Vision Service. So I'm going to scroll down to the next task. We also have some steps in here to manually create that policy if needed, but we don't need to do that. We're going to skip over that. And now we're at task 1, which is understand your data requirements. So this is just some information we want to share. When you're using Vision Service, we have both a synchronous API and an asynchronous API. And we support different formats for that. So for the synchronous API, you can pass in JPEGs and PNG files and for document analysis, but also PDFs and TIFFs. You can see up to 5 megabytes in size, where you're passing in a single image at a time. And then you can also do batches, same document types, but you can have up to 2,000 images in a batch. And we also support multi-page PDFs for that. So just keep that in mind for any usage of the service that you're thinking about. Now, one more thing we've got to do to get our environment ready is we've got to get some data up there that you can use with the service. So we're going to put some data into object storage. And object storage is one of those supporting services. It's a data management tool, very simple, straightforward. You can upload files into object storage. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to go create a bucket to put images in. So if you go back to your cloud environment, use that hamburger menu. That's the little 3-bar stack over in the upper left corner. Use that and go to storage. And then you'll see under object storage and archive, you'll see buckets. Just click that. It's like it's a container in object storage. And what you want to do is create a bucket. And we want to give this bucket a very specific name. We're going to refer to this bucket in our program later. And so we want to give it a name that we can use easily. So just call it Pi Day Demo, all one word, no spaces, lowercase. You can keep the default storage tier of standard. You can keep the default encryption where the cloud manages the keys for you. And then simply create. So that'll create a bucket for you, and there it appears in your list. And now open that bucket. And there's a couple other things we need to do. So we can create folders in the bucket, and this is handy just for organizing your data. So we're going to actually create 3 folders. Create one called lab-3. Let's see, how did we specify it? Yeah. Lab-3, create that one. Go ahead and create another one called Lab-4, Lab-4. And then we're going to need one later called Output. Okay, now we're going to upload some images to the Lab-3 and the Lab-4 folders. So if you're on Slack and you're in the Pi Day channel, we've already got if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see there's a Lab-3 zip and a Lab-4 zip. So you want to download those to your local computer, unzip those, and then you're going to copy the images in each respective zip to the corresponding folder that we just created in your bucket. So I've already got those unzipped on my machine. And what you need to do is click the folder and upload. And then you can actually just drag those files right onto the page and then hit the upload button. Okay, and then once they're uploaded, you can close, go back to the other folder. And we're going to upload sample images. There's 7 construction site images we're going to drop in. Let's see, they all upload in parallel. Okay, all mine uploaded. And that is done. We've got lab 3, we've got lab 4. I'm just checking our procedures here to make sure we got everything done. We created our output folder. All right, now we've done all our prep work to get our environment ready. Now we can play with it. So we're going to use the Vision service, and it's got a demo capability right in the console where it'll analyze an image for you right in the console, and that's what we're going to do. So this will give you a chance to see how it actually works, give you a little test drive. So go back to your console, hit that hamburger menu again, and go to Analytics and AI, and then you'll see under AI Services, you'll see Vision. Click Vision. And that takes you to the Vision Service console. And there's lots of useful supporting information on the page, but the part that you can play with is right here on the upper left. So you can see image classification, object detection, document AI. Let's try these out. Oh, well, let's do document AI first. Okay, we'll give you a little flavor of that. When you click the document AI, first thing that it's got a couple of default images already built in. So it'll analyze the first one. You can see it's a receipt, and you can see all this grayed text on there. Well, this is all the text that it's extracted. And over here on the right is the results. So you have all the information that the service has extracted from this one image. So you see a document type, it recognizes this as a receipt. Language is English. You get the raw text here, ordered line by line, or also sequentially by word. You can see example cafe, the address, phone number, all these pieces of information that you see right over here. You can actually see the request, the JSON request and response, if you'd like to study that. And that was just the text that it pulled off. Well, you can then get the key value pairs. So it found the merchant name, the merchant address, the merchant phone number, all of those things. So it paired up information on the receipt with these predetermined keys. And now we can pass that downstream and use that in our expense processing system. And if there's any tabular data on there, it'll find that. And sure enough, it found 2 lines of items here, an Americano and a very expensive water. Wow. Water goes down in value when you add coffee to it, I guess. So that shows you right there how the document AI works. And there's another sample image there you could play with if you wanted to. But let's go to object detection, because that's the one we're going to be working with today. So the default image comes up, and it's a scene here. Looks like in front of some sort of building. We see some cars. We see back on that sidewalk back there, there's some boxes. We see there are persons. Okay, and notice when you hover over them, it gives you the label of what it detected as that object, and you get a bounding box around that. We've got a bus back there. We've got the big car in front with the Oracle logo on it. We've got a taxi cab here, and even back behind, there's another just little fragment of a car, but it recognizes that as a car. So each of these is an object that it's detected. It's got its location in the image, which is identified by the bounding box, and you've got a label associated with it. And that's what we see over here in the results. And we also get a confidence, how confident the model was in the object that it detected. And if there was any raw text on here, like, license plate, well, it got that. So there was something else it picked up I'm not seeing, but anyway, it's picked up some text also in this. And click that next image. So this is kind of related to what we're doing today. This next sample image is a person and it detects them as a person, and it's also got a helmet. That's what it calls a hard hat, is a helmet. And we also see it's detected a human face. So we detect different aspects of a human, but that's all we do. We'll tell you if it's a face, a leg, a foot, an arm, things like that. So what we're going to be doing in the sample application is counting up scenes that have persons in them with helmets. Let's go back and take a look at our procedures. We just went through, we tried out some of those different features, and you can come back and try out the classification on your own. There's some sample images there that will tell you, you know, some aspects, some characteristics of the scene that it's looking at. So I think at this point, I am going to pass off to Mark, and he's going to take you through the next labs. Mark, over to you.
All right, thanks, Wes. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Heffernan, and I'm going to take you through the next remaining labs. The first one that we're going to start out with is the REST APIs, or Lab 3. So Lab 3 is really meant to show you how you can programmatically call the Vision service using the REST APIs. The only prerequisites to this lab are that we created you created the Pi demo bucket in your tenancy and added those Lab 3 images to that. And that was part of Lab 2, I believe. But with that, let's go and get started. So we're going to use Postman in order to call the Vision service using the REST APIs. And Postman is an API platform that allows you kind of to more easily use and call these different APIs, because we put together collections as well as environments to make it as simple as possible to get started with this. So the first thing that we'll need to do is go ahead and install Postman. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and click Postman, and it'll bring you to the installation page, and go ahead and get that installed. I actually already have that installed on my machine, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on to the next step. The next step, we'll need to download and import the Vision API collection. So you can see there's a link for that here, and I can open that up in a new tab. So when I open up this tab, you can see that there's actually a number of different collections listed here. And that's because as part of OCI, we try to make it simple to call the REST APIs, or at least test them out with many different services. So we've created many different collections for you to use. As part of this lab, we're going to use the Vision service collection. So here we can go ahead and select these 3 dots. We can select export. And let's go ahead and choose the latest v2.1 version for this collection and select export. You can see that we've just downloaded that. The next thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to go to our Postman client that we are running locally. We can select our collections. We can select import. We can now select upload files. We can select that collection that we just downloaded, and we can select open, and finally import. And if you're not familiar with collections in Postman, a collection is essentially a group of API calls that are already pre-configured for you. So you don't have to worry about creating kind of all the parameters or putting all that together and then making the API call. So if we open it up here, you can see that there's a number of different actions and a number of different folders here. And within these actions, you can see 2 examples of API calls that we're actually going to make today. The first one is the perform image analysis, which will allow us to pass an image to the Vision service and get that image analyzed. And then we have the document analysis API call, where we can pass a document like a PDF and get that information extracted from that document and then passed back to us, or we can even put that in object storage. So in order to make these API calls, we're going to need to make sure that we have the right credentials to do so. In order to do that, we'll need to import the Postman environment. So if we go back to our instructions, we can go back to the lab and scroll down a little bit here, and you can see that there is a link for downloading the OCI credentials environment. So if I right click on this one, you can see here that I'll go ahead and select the environment, and we have the OCI credentials. So I'm going to go actually select the three dots over here on the right side. I'm going to select export, and that'll go ahead and download that OCI credentials environment for me. Now, again, we'll go back to our Postman client. We'll select environments. We'll again select import. We'll go ahead and upload the OCI credentials environment. Then we'll go ahead and import that. You can see here, if I select the credentials, you can see here there's a number of different variables and a number of different values that we'll need to go ahead and fill in to make sure that our REST API calls have the proper permission to access the OCI Vision service that we can get the results back. But before I fill out those values, make sure you go ahead and select this check mark to make sure that this environment is your active environment that you're using when you're running any API calls from this collection. So let's go ahead and start filling in some of these variables or values for the variables. The first thing that we'll need is the tenancy OCID. So we can get that by going to the OCI. Oh, there we go. We can get that by going to the OCI Console. We can select our profile in the top right, and then we can go ahead and select our tenancy. And you can see under the tenancy information, there's a couple different pieces of information, and we can get the OCID right here. So we can go ahead and copy that. We can go back to Postman, and we'll go ahead and paste it right here. The next thing that we'll do is we'll get our user OCID. So we'll again go back to the OCI Console. We'll select our profile, and then we'll select my profile. Then once you get to your profile, you'll see again, there's a number of different pieces of information that you get about your profile, and one of those is the OCID. We'll go ahead and copy that, go back to our Postman environment, and we'll paste that right in there. The next thing that we'll need is our fingerprint and private key. So in order to get these two values, we'll go back to the Postman environment, or the OCI Console, sorry about that. And on our profile, we're going to go ahead and scroll down, and on the left-hand side, you'll see this API keys. We'll go ahead and select that, and then we're going to create a new API key. So select Add API Key. And once you've selected Add API Key, you want to select Generate API Key Pair and download the private key. And the private key, that information is what we'll put into the Postman environment. And make sure that you've downloaded that before clicking Add. So once we've downloaded that, we can go ahead and select Add. And here you can see we get a couple pieces of information about our configuration. One of those pieces of information is the fingerprint. So we can go ahead and select that, copy that, and paste that into our Postman environment. And you can see here, if we go back to the OCI Console, that we also get the region as well. So let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm using the US Phoenix region. So we'll copy that region identifier, and we'll go ahead and paste this here where the default is Ashburn, but I'm actually using a different region. So I'm going to make sure that that new region is reflected in my values. Next, we'll want to use or actually provide the private key information. So I did download the private key. So if I just go to my downloads, you can see that I have the private key right here. If I double click this, I want to copy all of this information. I'm going to go ahead and paste this value right here into the private key. And the final value that we need to provide is the compartment OCID. So we can get the compartment OCID by going back to the OCI Console. I can close out of this, and I can actually go into the burger menu here. I can select identity and security. I can select compartments. And as part of this API key, I just created it in the root compartment. So I can select my root compartment. And you can see here that the OCID is provided. So I can copy it here. I can go back to my Postman environment, and I can paste the compartment OCID right here. So this is all the variables that we need to provide values for in order to do this lab. The next thing that I want to do is make sure and save these so that I can use them. Next, we'll go ahead and go back to the collections and go ahead and make some API requests. So if I go back to the lab instructions, we can see that we went through all of this information. And the next task that we'll do is actually make an API call to image analysis and provide it one of the APIs that we added to objects, or one of the images that we provided to object storage. So here, what I'm about to do is I'm about to follow task 2, invoke the image analysis.
Mark,
REST
I believe
API.
there are a few people who want you to slow down just a little bit.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and pause to make sure that I'm you're not going too fast. And definitely let me know in the chat to see if there's any questions or provide any questions, and I'll definitely help out. It looks like the question, I cannot see where to get the compartment.
And we can kind of get a sense of where everyone's at.
Yeah, it looks like there's a question here. I could not get where to get the compartment. So why don't I go ahead and show that again. So to get the compartment, you can select in the OCI console, you can select the burger menu here. You can then go down and select identity and security. And then you can see there's under identity, there's compartments. So if I select compartments, then here I've been working in the root compartment, which is possibly the case for you, or whichever compartment you're working in. You can select the compartment that you're looking to call the vision service in. And then here under the compartment information, you can see that there's an OCID, so you can copy that and then provide that in the Postman environment.
Looks like we have a couple of folks still catching up.
By
the way, if you have to skip a lab, you could skip lab 3 for right now, and still come back and finish setting up your tool. But I know we want to try to get you to lab 4 as well, where we actually run the program.
We'll wait another 10, 20 seconds to let people catch up though. So there's a question, are these labs available to try after this call? Yes, and actually this recording will be provided as well, but all of these labs and all of this information is provided in GitHub. I think the link for it might be in the chat. I'm sure we can provide that again. But yes, all of it's available, and you should be able to do it just even offline without any recordings, but we'll, in addition to that, provide the recordings to make sure and help you out. So yeah, there's a question here. So with Postman, we'll be making API calls. Could these be done from the OCI console natively instead of using a third-party download? So really, yes, you can use really any way that you would. We wouldn't directly call the REST APIs from the OCI console, but you could use other third-party tools or write an application or even an OCI function that calls the OCI Vision REST APIs. So you definitely don't have to use Postman. The main reason that we're using Postman here is just because we provide examples in the Postman collections as well as the environment to make it a little bit more simple just to try it out. But yes, there are definitely a number of different ways that you can call the REST APIs. In Postman, we need to copy all the values in initial value. Yeah, so in Postman here, you want to copy the values in current value and initial value, and then make sure that you go ahead and save those when you provide those different values. And by saving those, as well as making sure that in this environment, you set it as the active environment, when you call these or use these API calls, it will go ahead and use those that active environment, those API calls to make sure that it can get access to the OCI Vision service. All right. If there's any other questions, definitely let me know. And yeah, thanks for letting me know that I'm going a little too fast. I definitely appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I'll continue on, and the next thing that we'll do is go ahead and make the REST API calls. So let me go ahead and show the GitHub. Again, everything in here is documented step by step. So if you want to do this offline, you definitely can. But the next task that we're going to go through is calling the image analysis REST API. So I mentioned before that as part of these Postman collections, we provide a couple different examples of how you can call the APIs. And in these different examples, you can see that there's a default body for the REST API request that's provided. In this request, we're actually going to point the Vision service to one of the images that we put in object storage. So here earlier in lab 2, we provided a skiing image and put that into the lab 3 folder. So we're going to make a REST API call to the OCI Vision service to say, hey, we put this image in object storage. We would like you to do object detection on this particular image. And then that Vision service will provide back results for the objects that were detected, as well as the bounding boxes for where those objects were detected within the image. So here I can go ahead and copy the body that's provided. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the perform image analysis API request. So if we click on the perform image analysis API request, you'll see that there's a new tab that's created here. The next thing that we'll go ahead and do is we'll select the body. And before I mentioned that there's some default body information here where by default you could provide the data inline. But here, since we went ahead and provided and put that data or put that image in object storage, I'm actually going to go ahead and erase all of this and provide the body that we got from the lab information. And that's really just because a couple of these parameters are already filled out, so it's pretty easy just to copy and paste it. So again, here, the features that we're going to use as part of image analysis are object detection. So we're sending an image and we want to be able to identify the various objects that are in that image. The next image or the image information here is basically telling the service that we have this image in object storage. It's in a bucket called PyDayDemo. It's in a folder called lab3, and the image that we want it to analyze is skiing.jpg. And if you didn't see earlier, if we pull up the skiing image, this is what it looks like. So we'd expect the service to be able to identify at least that there's a person here. Maybe the person is wearing a helmet, maybe identifying some skis, since those are also objects, and provide us the bounding boxes for each one of these different objects. So you can see, though, that although most of these parameters are filled out, we are missing the namespace. So your object storage will have a particular namespace that you'll need to provide as part of this. So we'll go ahead and erase this placeholder. We'll go back to the OCI console, and we can go back here. And to get the namespace, one of the things that we can do is we can select our profile. We can select my profile. Oh, actually, sorry, we can select profile and we can select tenancy. So once you select profile and you select tenancy, you can see again that there's a number of different pieces of information about the tenancy. And one of those pieces of information is your object storage namespace. So what you want to do is copy this, and we'll go back to our Postman environment and we'll go ahead and paste this value. So once we paste this value, we're going to want to save this body. So since we updated it, we'll go ahead and save it. And now we're ready to go ahead and send the request. So we'll go ahead and click send. As you can see, what happened here is that the API request told the Vision service, hey, I have this skiing image in my object storage. Here's where it is. We included all the environment variables, so the API request had access to the OCI Vision service. The OCI Vision service ran object detection on that particular image, and then it passed back all the objects that were identified as well as the bounding boxes. So you can see here that there is a person that was identified, and you can see the specific bounding box for where that person was identified. You can see that a ski was identified. You can see that the person was wearing a helmet and the helmet was identified. And you can see the bounding box for that object as well. So now that we've called the image analysis part of the OCI Vision service, we're going to make an API request to the document analysis. So in this scenario, what we're going to do is we uploaded a receipt earlier as part of Lab 2. And this receipt is a grocery store receipt. So you can think of a scenario where maybe you have a grocery store receipt, maybe you went out to a restaurant, and maybe you want to more efficiently and more quickly process a lot of this data. So there's a lot of information in here, so it might take me a while to manually extract any of these line items or the values, or even identify where the address is, the phone number. So we can extract a lot of this text as well as extract the various key value pairs. So what we're going to do is let's go back to the lab information, and we're going to do lab 3 or task 3, which is invoke the document AI REST API. So again, here, let's go ahead and copy the new body that we want to use that is really just being used here because we have a lot of the information pre-filled in for you. We can go back to the Postman environment, make sure to select perform document analysis. We'll go ahead and select the body. We'll go ahead and get rid of that and paste in this new body that we want to use. You can see here that again, we're pointing the OCI Vision service to a particular document that we put in the object storage. You can see that we provided the bucket name, the folder for object storage, as well as the name of the image. And here we're mentioning a couple features that we want to perform on this particular image. So the first one is text recognition. So we want to be able to extract the text from this particular image. And then here we also want to do key value extraction. So because this is a receipt, the OCI Vision service can identify predefined fields within receipts and find those particular values that match up with those fields and provide you that additional information, which includes things like the merchant name, the address, the phone number, and different line items. So again, here, the only kind of parameter that we haven't provided is the namespace, because that's unique to your particular environment. So again, we'll go back to the OCI Console. And we were just on this page, but again, if you want to get back here, you want to click your profile in the top right, you want to select your tenancy, and then under the tenancy information, you can see that you have the object storage namespace. We're going to again copy this namespace, go back to the Postman environment, paste that in, and we'll go ahead and save that. So this is all the information that we need in order to make this API request in order to analyze this particular receipt. So because we're all ready to go, we'll go ahead and click send. And what's happening here is that the OCI Vision service is going to identify that image in object storage. It's going to extract the text from that image and extract these key value pairs. So you can see here, if I make this a little bigger, you can see that there's a number of different words that were extracted, like Trader and Joe's. But if I scroll here, and you can see there's a lot of good information that's extracted here. You can see that there's even different line items from this receipt identified by this field name line item that were extracted from the receipt. So you can see here, I scroll down a little bit, the value from this particular item was extracted. You can see here that identified that broccoli is one of the different line items. And then if I scroll down, you'll see the various spices that go along with these particular line items. So with that, we have now completed lab 3, and maybe I'll pause for a minute or two to see if there are any additional questions. I don't see anything right now, so maybe I'll wait 10 seconds or so. All right, now that we've completed lab 3, let's go ahead and go back to the lab instructions. And I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the next lab. So Wes mentioned earlier in this that we, as part of lab 4, want to solve a safety scenario. So think of a scenario where you have a construction site and you have particular images of that construction site, and you want to identify in which particular images the number of hard hats or helmets in this case match the number of people in this image, so that you can either prove that everyone on the site is wearing their helmet or their hard hat, or you can identify cases where maybe somebody isn't wearing their helmet, and you want to make sure and maybe alert them to create a safer environment on this particular construction site. So we're going to solve this by running a Python script that reaches out to the OCI Vision service, uses a pre-trained model to identify the number of helmets as well as the number of people in particular images, and then gets those results back and lets us know in what images do these numbers not match up. So you can see here an example of a good image where there is somebody with a hard hat or helmet on a construction site. So we would say that everything is looking good here. And you can see here is another image, a sample image, where you can see that there's some people on a site that don't have hard hats. So we want to know if this is the case, so that we can determine if this is a safety concern or not. So let's go ahead and get started. The first task that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up our config file. And the config file is really meant to house all the information that we need in order to allow our Python script to access the OCI Vision service. So we need to make sure to have the right credentials in order to access the service. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up, I'm on Windows, so I'm going to go ahead and open up an admin command prompt. And it can do that by right-clicking on the Start menu and selecting Command Prompt. And I want to make sure to open up an admin command prompt. So I'll select that. I'll go ahead and just put this on the right side, and I'll go ahead and make this a little bigger for everyone. Let's go ahead and move this to the side. Why don't I go ahead and just kind of mirror that on the side so we can see what's happening here. So in Windows, we provided a number of different commands that you need to set up this config file, as well as the folder that the config file is in. But the commands are a little bit different on Mac OS and Linux. So just make sure that you're following the commands for those if you're on a different operating system. But again, in the GitHub lab procedures, we do provide what those different commands look like on these different operating systems. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and actually want to go ahead and CD to my just users. Go ahead and CD to my user folder, just to make sure that I am kind of adding all this information to an environment that I want it to be in. Next, I'm going to go ahead and copy this command and go ahead and create the .oci folder. So you can see here, if I select, I can CD to the OCI folder now, you can see that this OCI folder has been created. And really, this OCI folder is meant to house the config file. So you'll see when we run through the Python script, this is where the config file will live, and the config file has all the right information in order for the Python script to access the OCI Vision service. So now that we've created this OCI folder, the next thing that we'll need to do is actually create this config file. So in order to do that, we need to go ahead and create an API key. So we've actually already created an API key as part of the previous lab in lab 3. We just didn't actually use the actual private key file. We just took the information out of that, and then we put it into the Postman environment. So if you go back and find, if you go back to the, here we'll go back to the OCI Console. We'll go ahead and select our profile in the top right. We'll again select My Profile. And then again, we'll scroll down here and we'll select API Keys. So again, we did create this earlier in lab 3 where we created this new API key, and we did download the private key as part of that. So really we can go ahead and reuse this API key that we created. So to reuse this, what we'll need to do is we'll need to create a config file and add that config file information. So to get the config file information, we'll go ahead and select View configuration file after selecting the 3 dots here on the right for this particular API key. And you can see that we have all of the configuration file preview here. So we viewed this before, but we didn't do anything with it because we didn't necessarily need the configuration file in the REST for the REST APIs. But here we'll go ahead and select copy here. So there's a copy button right at the bottom, and we'll copy this. And then we'll go ahead and create our config file. So if I go back to my command prompt, I can type notepad, and then I can just type config to go ahead and start a new config file. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste the config file parameters that I got from the OCI console into this configuration file. You can see the configuration file provides a lot of the different parameters that we just used in the OCI or in the Postman environment, including the region, the tenancy OCID, and the user OCID. The one additional piece of information that we'll need to add here is the key file, which is really the path to our private key. So you can go ahead and erase this information. And what you want to do is locate where you downloaded your private key. So in this case, I have my private key in my downloads, but to make it easier, I'll go ahead and just copy this private key. And I'll go ahead and go into users, and I'll go into OCI, which is just the .oci folder that I created earlier. And I'll go ahead and paste this just to make sure I can keep these together for this lab. So now that this particular private key is in this location, I'll want to go ahead and add that to the config file. So I can designate that the config file is in this particular location. So I want to do that by providing the path for the particular private key. So you can see that I just provided the path for where the private key existed because I just copied it in the OCI folder. So once you have all this information added, we'll go ahead and select save, and I'll close that out. But because this is a config file and not a text file, at least because I'm on Windows, what you'll want to do is you want to go to the OCI or .oci folder, and you want to get rid of this text extension to convert it into a config file. So you'll see here that the type will just show up as file now, and you can still edit it using Notepad, but now it's a proper config file. So once we've done all that, we've now set up the OCI or the .oci folder with all of the configuration that we need, so we can move on to the next step in the lab. So if I go back to the lab instructions, we can scroll down here because we went through all of these different steps. And the next step here will be, we need to make sure and install Python, and then we'll go ahead and run the Python script. So here I can actually CD back to my, my earlier directory. And the first thing that I'll need to do is run, if I'm on Windows, I want to run Python -- version to make sure that I have at least Python 3 installed. So I can go ahead and run this. You can see that I do. If you're on Mac OS or Linux, you can run the Python 3 command. But if you don't have this installed, you want to go ahead and install it. So I'll maybe give a little bit of time, maybe like a minute or so for folks to go ahead and install this. If you haven't installed it, there is a link within this GitHub for python.org where you can install it. And when installing it, make sure that you also install pip. So we can see here that if I go ahead and paste this in here, we can see that I have pip installed as well. So you want both of those installed. Actually, you need both of those installed. Go ahead and look and see if there's any questions that have come up. Definitely let me know if there's anything that I can help with. Doesn't look like there's anything so far. So I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. Again, all these steps are in GitHub, and this will be recorded. So if you want to look at it later and continue to follow on, then definitely feel free to do so. So now that we've confirmed that we have Python installed and we also have pip installed, we can go ahead and set up Python. So the first thing that we'll need to do is go ahead and set up our virtual environment. The reason that we do this is to make sure that when we're installing the OCI SDK, that we want to make sure that no environment variable is going to conflict with anything related to Python. So it's just general good practice to go ahead and put this in a virtual environment. So first we'll go ahead and copy this command. I'll go ahead and get rid of this placeholder. So we run python -m venv, and then we'll go ahead and give our virtual environment a name. So we'll just call it virtual environment, and I'll click run. What this is going to do is going to go ahead and set up our environment, and it should only take a couple seconds or so. All right, looks like it's done. And again, make sure if you're running on a different OS that there is a slightly different command here. The next thing that we'll need to do is go ahead and activate that virtual environment. So we can go ahead and say virtual environment /scripts/activate. We can go ahead and run that, and you can see that we're now in the OCI environment. Again, the command for macOS and Linux is slightly different here, but provided in the GitHub. Next, we'll go ahead and install the install OCI. So we'll run, go ahead and copy this command. This will only take a couple of seconds. And while this is running, I do want to make sure and point out that if you are using any VPN, I found that it generally doesn't work with VPN on. So I make sure and turn off my VPN just to get OCI installed. And you can always turn it back on. But in my case, I currently have it off just because I've seen issues myself when trying to install OCI with VPN enabled. So we'll wait a couple of seconds for that to finish. It shouldn't take too long, but I'll go ahead and pause while that finishes. And then if there's any other questions that come up, definitely let me know. All right, well, that's finishing. The next task is to actually add the sample images to object storage. So when Wes was going through lab 2, we actually already did this. So there's a little note here just as a reminder that if you already added these during lab 2, we don't need to do that. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and skip over this part. But again, the instructions are here if you want to just jump right to lab 4. But as part of lab 2, we did already add these lab 4 images to object storage in the PyDay bucket in the lab 4 folder. So I can go ahead and go scroll down. And now we're getting to the fun part. So now we've set everything up. We have our .oci folder created. We have OCI installed. So now let's go ahead and run and put together this Python script and go ahead and run it. So the next thing that we'll go ahead and do is go ahead and copy all of this code. So we do provide all of the code here, and almost everything is filled out. The only thing that we'll need to do is add a couple different variables here that match up for the environment that we've set up. So go ahead and copy this code. You can use your own IDE. You can even use Notepad. So just to make this simple, I'm going to go ahead and just use Notepad. I would normally use a different IDE, but just to make sure that it's clear that this can be done pretty easily, let's go ahead and create a new file called Anomaly Detection.py. Again, just using Notepad just to show kind of how simple this process can be. We'll go ahead and paste all the code in here. And then, as I mentioned, the only other kind of variable or updates that we need to make to this script are adding a couple of these variables. So if you look in the GitHub and scroll down, we actually provide the values for a number of these. So let's go ahead and fill in the different variables where we already know that information just offhand. The first one is the bucket name. So this is, as part of the script, it's going to access the particular images that we've added into the PyDay demo bucket. And then it's going to look for the lab 4 folder. And then we want to provide any of the results into another folder within the PyDay demo bucket called output. So let's go back to our script here. We'll go ahead and update the output prefix just call it output, just to make sure that we want to add all our outputs to this particular folder. Then the input prefix is going to be lab4. The compartment, or actually the bucket name here, we have as PyDay demo. Go ahead and save that. And then we'll need the namespace name and the compartment ID. So the namespace name is the namespace for object storage. So we've gotten this a couple times, but just as a reminder, we can go to the OCI console. Let's go ahead and close out of this. We can select our profile in the top right. We can select our tenancy. And then again, in our tenancy information, you can see that the object storage namespace is right here. So we'll go ahead and copy that. We'll open up our script and we'll go ahead and paste that information here. Finally, the last variable that we'll need to add is the compartment ID. So we got that earlier, but just as a refresher, to get the compartment ID, we can go ahead and select the burger menu here. We can select identity and security. Under the identity section, you can see the compartments. So we'll select that. Again, I'm just using the root compartment, so I'm going to select my root compartment. And then here you can see under the compartment information is the OCI information. So I'll go ahead and copy that. I'll go back to my script. And I'll go ahead and paste that in here and select save. So now we've added all the variables that we need for this particular script to run. So now we can go ahead and run it. So if we type Python and we select the script, we can make sure it looks like it did save. We can go ahead and run this script. So while that's running, I'll give a little bit of information about what's happening here. So in this script, basically what we're doing is we are using this config file to make sure that we can get access to the OCI Vision service. We'll then access the object storage in order to go ahead and grab the images from that particular bucket. And we're actually going to do a batch call and provide all of these images as one request. We'll go through and make sure that we have all the images in that particular bucket, because we want to provide all of these images at the construction site to the OCI Vision service. We want to do object detection on this all these images to identify the helmets as well as the people. Then here we're putting together the requests for here are all of our input images, as well as here's the output locations where we want to put the results in. And as if you remember earlier, as part of the variables, we did have the output prefix. So we'll use the same bucket to put the output results in, but we are going to put them in an output folder. Then if we scroll down here, we can see that we put together the final parameters for the call to the OCI Vision service, which happens here. And then what happens here is that we're calling the Vision service just every 5 seconds or so to get an update about how this is going, because we provided a couple of different images to the service. And as we make these calls, we can get the various statuses of the service. So you can see here that the job was originally accepted. The job status is currently in progress, but once it succeeds, we should see those results and be able to identify in what images there are hard hats mentioned, and in what images there are people mentioned, and when do those numbers not match up with each other. So if I close this, then you can see that the results are in. So we can see that we analyzed 7 images, and this is all of the images that we provided and put in object storage. We can see that 5 of these images, or 3 of these images, didn't have matching numbers of helmets and people. So we can actually open up some of these images. I can select here. I can just select my downloads because I have some of the images for lab 4 here. And we can see that in construction site 6, for example, you can see that there are people here. There are people wearing hats and even beanies, but they're not helmets. So the Vision service can actually distinguish between what's a hat and what's a helmet. So this picture was it was flagged in that it doesn't have, there's 3 people mentioned or 3 people discovered, but they all don't have helmets on. So it was flagged because they are wearing helmets. And with that, you have now completed the lab 4 and been able to create a Python script, run that Python script so that it will take images from object storage, pass those to the OCI Vision service, run object detection on them using the pre-trained model and get those results. And just to show you kind of where the actual results were output, other than just here, we can go into our buckets. So if we select the burger menu again, we select storage, and then we select buckets, you can see that in our PyDay demo bucket, if we scroll down, we have the lab 3 folder that we created, the lab 4 folder created, but we also have this output bucket that was created as part of this script. So if we open up some of these folders, you can see that all of the JSON is provided here. So essentially what this is for each image that was analyzed, you get back the objects that were detected as well as the bounding boxes, and all of that is provided in each one of these JSONs. So you can see that it's mapped to each one of these particular images so that it's easy to tell kind of what images were or what objects were extracted from each image.
All right, so just to wrap up, we've got a survey for our lab that we'd love to get your feedback on. And if you have a use case that you're thinking about, would like to explore a little more, you'd like to talk to somebody from our product management team, we give you an opportunity to do that. And let us know that it's okay to contact you, and we will. It's not, this is not a sales call. This is just us wanting to help you and learn about your use case. Also, we have the PyDay quiz. So here's the link to that. Both of those links for both the survey and the PyDay quiz are in the chat, so you can grab those easily. Test out your limit. There's a couple of questions on the PyDay quiz from our lab. I hope you'll try that out. I see some people have already posted today in the Slack that they completed the quiz. And that's it. I hope you've had a fantastic PyDay and learned some really interesting things with all of the diverse content that we've had. I hope you'll be inspired to check out some of the other Oracle AI services and find ways that you can help or apply them to your business and do some really cool stuff. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you hopefully next year. Take care. Bye.